And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, when people call into the L.A. City Council public comment line, sure, they could go off on Kevin De Leon, they could go off on Nithya Raman, but it's a public comment section. You can call in and complain just about anything, like this guy.
You know what bothers me is lobsters getting assassinated. 75-year-old lobsters that have done nothing to nobody, and they're getting boiled to death. Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Was he a representative from PETA?
I think he had a bad experience at Red Lobster.
Of all the subjects that grind your gears, that's what motivated this gentleman to call into an LA City Council meeting?
Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles. Thank you.
That's the issues that are real important to the voters.
Well, at least this one didn't swear.
Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Does the guy with the Mickey Mouse voice who says unbelievably racist things still call in?
Occasionally, but I think he's also the same guy that brings a ventriloquist dummy and does his goat voice. I think there's only one guy that does all the voices, and now he shows up in person.
No relation to Paul Winchell.
Different guy.
Well, as they say, Randy, we get the government we deserve.
Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles. Thank you.
I just don't know what we did that was so wrong.
All of a sudden, I'm craving lobster.
Is it Lobster Month, Lobster Fest over at Red Lobster?
Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles. Thank you.
What if I dip it in butter first?
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former member of the House of Representatives representing the great state of Florida, Congressman Mark Foley. Welcome.
Thank you, John. Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles.
Hey, let's compare.
Stop the lobster genocide in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Well, you can't accuse him of being impolite.
Not at all. Not at all.
So good to have you on the show today. So much I want to talk about. Let's start out by talking about a California politician who is now in charge of the House of Representatives. That, of course, is Bakersfield Congressman and Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, who has a razor-thin majority in his Chamber of Commerce. And, of course, it took him, 15, 16 votes to finally get the Speaker's gavel when he was attempting to become the Speaker of the House. Well, now he's got some critics that are back in front of the microphones, including another Florida congressman, Matt Gaetz, who apparently wants to run for governor in that state, who is actively trying to knock Kevin McCarthy out of leadership yet again. We don't know if he has the votes or not quite yet. That situation is still unfolding as we speak. What do you make of what's going on right now in Washington, D.C., and how firmly planted is Kevin McCarthy in that Speaker's office?
Oh, let me tell you something. Kevin has to watch his back 24/7. There's no question. When you have a large majority, as we did when Newt Gingrich was Speaker, there was no way this would be going on. We were able to, let a member or two or a dozen have their way. They could scream about something we were doing. They never had the votes to block us or change the direction of the policy. What's happening to Kevin is, number one, he has 4-vote majority. So he has to have everybody on board. That's virtually impossible in the U.S. House. It's impossible on either side of the aisle. Imagine if they had only a 4-vote margin on the Democratic side, and they're trying to get Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to agree with somebody from the Democratic coalition in Alabama. Highly unlikely. But we find ourselves in a very tenuous position because there is so much that needs to get done. Now, the reluctant members, we'll call them, of the 4 or 5 or 9, depending on how you count them, the far-right extremists like Matt Gaetz. Joe Scarborough used to be like that. He was one of these guys that would obstruct almost everything. He was a gang of 11. And they would throw stuff in our way and say, we're giving away the house, we're spending the kids' inheritance, we're doing everything diabolical in Washington. They got to be heard. They got to be on the news, but at the end of the day, we were able to defeat their efforts and rule and run the House. It's not easy. Kevin has the most difficult job, even if he had 20 vote majority. But with 4, he cannot lose a vote. So right now he's got Chip Roy, which is one of the most vociferous members from Texas of the Republican group, along with Matt Gaetz, who has some simmering feud with Kevin. I'm not sure what happened. Matt's lucky he's still in office and not in federal prison because he was being investigated for having some type of affair with an underage girl, crossing state lines, and I think they even went to Jamaica or Dominican Republic. His cohort in crime is now in federal prison, who is the former I believe, tax collector of Osceola County. They were both running mates, hanging out together and doing all kinds of things. Now, I look at it, that's past history. Matt has every right to run for governor, but we need people that can manage and get the trains to run on time. And right now, Kevin has to be at wit's end, probably wishes he never had the job. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because it's a great job if you can manage it. But he's really at wit's end, and I can only imagine we're all doing nothing but handing victory to Democrats when we act like this on key policy issues.
When you see someone who's out there grandstanding in front of the cameras, they're showing up on all the cable news programs, they're all over social media, and they're also running for another office simultaneously. How much is their run for another office coloring what they're doing in the House?
95% of what they're trying to do is gain attention. I ran for the Senate in 2002 for the 2004 cycle. And so anytime I could get on the news, Sean Hannity, whatever show, if they'd book me, I'd appear. And it's very convenient that you can talk about issues that don't necessarily relate to your district, but get you propelled into the news cycle. I'm not saying it's a negative thing. It's part of what we do in politics. It's the art of the game. It's the art of the deal, in the words of Donald Trump. But what he's doing now is putting everything in jeopardy for the sake of his own political career, this future run for governor. And it looks bad. You know, teamwork is always a difficult thing in a party, Democrat or Republican. You're there to represent your voters, both Democrat, Republicans, and independents. You're not there to grandstand for one party or the other, but you do come from a party. Your voters elected you, and you won as a member of a party. But then you have to look at what is the object of your frustration or deliberation, and does it lend itself to fixing a problem? So right now, all he's doing is causing enormous pain for every other member who have to go home and face the wrath of voters who say, why can't you get the simplest things done in Washington? And Matt wins on the score of getting attention. But does that make him governor? I don't think so. I don't think people what's your gal's name? Katie out there that I don't think is going to be a senator of California. And Katie Porter. She's another one that just seems to grind her teeth and gnash her teeth about everything. And she's not going to get elected because she's the kind of person that doesn't look for consensus. Listen, it's good to be a strong, forceful opponent or proponent of your party, but it's not good to be an opponent of your party when it comes to trying to get Washington to look reasonable, sensible, and capable of delivering on things that were promised during the last election. So I just think these people who are banging at the moon are doing so only for personal aggrandizement, have no interest in solving the bigger problems of the country. They're just simply looking for the next opportunity to place their name on a ballot for some other office. And I wish they'd just resign and go do it.
Talk to me about this from the personal level, because when you are a caucus and you're trying to get your legislation through, and it's something as important as funding the government or getting the budget through, whatever the case may be, and you have your regular caucus lunches or caucus breakfasts or whenever it is that you meet, and there's one person or a handful of people that is standing in the way of you getting your program through so you can move on to the next thing and try to fulfill more of the obligations that you have with your constituents. What's it like when you're standing in line next to them with your plate, getting ready to scoop eggs on your plate and bacon, and they're standing in front of you? Do they get a chilly reception? Is it outright hostile? Does everyone just put their animosity, leave it at the door, and you treat them like normal? What happens?
Well, interestingly enough, you never want to burn a friend, and you always want to hope that they'll see the light. So you never waste your animus towards someone just because they're not going along with the program. So I wouldn't say it's chilly. I think that we would go out of our way to avoid the confrontation. But the commentary behind the scenes among the leadership, and I was a deputy whip, and one of our jobs was to obviously count the votes before we took something to the floor to ensure we had the votes necessary. So we spent a lot of time personally looking at each person that was causing problems, looking at their district. Why are they acting like this? Are they in a close election? Is this a vital vote for their survival? And we would try to be sympathetic if they came from a marginal district where every vote counts. We had a guy from Pennsylvania, John Fox, who I would have to go to all the time. I said, John, it's a motion to adjourn. You could vote with us, please. He'd say, oh, thanks, Mark. I said, gee, you don't even pay any attention. You're so afraid of your own shadow. But, you know, it was humorous because we had enough votes, but that kind of behavior on key votes drives many of us crazy. And it is a collegial thing. You know, Congress is like a Rotary Club or something. You're all in the same game. You're all doing the same thing. And when it starts making you look bad in your district, because people will say, well, Mark, you wouldn't be friends with Matt Gaetz, would you? And I'd say, well, he's a different character. Lauren Boebert probably wouldn't be somebody I'd go to lunch with. I don't think I'd find Marjorie Taylor Greene worthy of a cup of wine or a glass of beer. I should have said it. You know, I mean, these are people that I wouldn't go out of my way to befriend unless I had to, as a whip operator, trying to get their votes. But there is a chilling effect now in a personal way, and I've noticed that in conversations with Roy Blunt, conversation with Mark Sanford, who used to serve there, people that are still there, and people that have departed recently, all tell me that the animus towards each other on the same side or the same members of the team is deep and heartfelt. People are not conciliatory. They're not, oh, I understand. No, they're very angry and they're backbiting, and there probably is a chill in the cafeteria line, if not an outright attempt to smother them with bacon grease.
Well, okay, so you mentioned Joe Scarborough, and the way you described him, it sounds like, I guess back then Joe was different than Joe is now. Joe's over at MSNBC, and he sounds like the rest of them over there. But back then, it seems like he was more of a contrarian than anything. If it was your job to count the votes and to keep people in line, how do you manage a personality like that for someone who is a regular presence on cable news and talk radio and social media to the extent that it existed back then, who is also a contrarian?
Well, being contrarian is something you've got to micromanage. You know, with Joe, he was pro-life. He was arch-right conservative. He would, virtually block any appropriation bill. He was new at this. He'd never been in public life before. He wasn't a city councilman. He wasn't a county commissioner. He wasn't a state legislator. So he had no idea, and I know to some of your audience, they don't like to hear the word, but he had no idea how to make deals and get things done. It's difficult with someone like that because he had a propensity, and I think he knew where he was going all along. I think he had this career path cut out for him long before we knew it. And he was finding ways to hone his message on TV through these show appearances when he was a member of Congress. But we would have to then double down and go to somebody like the appropriations chairman, who happened to be Bill Young, and he was the head of appropriations, and he was from Florida. So we'd have to go see him privately and say, you need to talk to Scarborough about that military appropriation because he represents huge military bases in Pensacola. So that's the way we'd have to get his attention. You want to keep going on TV, Joe, those F-16s are going to get moved to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, where the chairman is from. And believe me, we can move them tomorrow and the personnel with them. So that's where it gets really the rubber meets the road. So then you start seeing them fall back in line because they can't go home to their rotaries. They can't go home to their Kiwanis. They can't go home to the bases of millions or hundreds of thousands of retirees that are military-based, either served in the military or are currently on active duty. You just can't get home and say, how did you lose the F-16 program? How did you lose the training mission? So that's where it really becomes hardball. And that's how the process works. You sometimes can't take any more of their, constant media talking points, chastising our party at our expense and let them get away with it. And so then, Bill Young would make the call and say, listen, you're about an inch away from losing something. So if you want to keep playing this game, stay focused on being an antagonist. And lo and behold, all of a sudden that vote would deliver itself to our group, and we'd find out now we only have 3 votes to catch up. And that's what you do, vote by vote. You go in there and say, what's in that member's district that they can't afford to lose? And now we're going to play games with them and show them they're either going to stay with us and help us, or we're going to see that they're retired in the next cycle. Now, that's not easy to do because when you're, again, Kevin McCarthy, you can't go after Matt Gaetz. You can't go after these things and try and cause the pain that we were able to when we had a 42-seat majority. We were able to chastise members and pull them back by virtue of the bait and switch. You either come with us or we're taking away your F-16 program. And so that was a lot more effective than our current speaker's able to do. And I feel for him because it's virtually impossible right now to run that place.
No one wants to run for office as someone who is a politician. Everyone wants to be the anti-politician, the outsider who runs for office. But there are certain vocational skills that are necessary to be successful in that position. Did you notice a difference when you were serving with someone if they had, for example, served in their state legislature beforehand, on their city council, as a county supervisor, and they had that background with them when they came to Washington?
No question. No question. Some of them got elected, like Scarborough got elected almost as a lark. He got into a campaign and ended up winning against a very long-term incumbent Democrat. So it was a shock to Florida's political landscape. So with that came a newbie who had no skill sets. When we're talking to somebody that used to be a Senate majority leader in a legislature in Montana, let's say, you could convince them quickly about here's where we're going, here's why we're trying to get there, and here are the nuanced pieces in order for us to get the vote. They get it. It was a simple knowledge. It's like trying to teach an architect to build a skyscraper when they're stock and trade is single-family homes. You're not going to be able to do it very easily, and it's not going to happen seamlessly, and it's going to take a long time. Same example. A legislator, county commissioner, they get the drill about getting votes, fixing problems. I wouldn't want to be George Gascon today with this police shooting and his history of coddling criminals. I think the world's changing, and people like Gascon are going to find themselves unemployed because of the way they're acting. What's his name from Pennsylvania that just now gets to wear his sweatpants into the chamber is amazing to me. Fetterman, because he would look like a guy that would have been charged for the January 6th riots. I mean, he walks in the building. Now, he has prior experience, but not much of it. He was lieutenant governor, I think, for Pennsylvania. So he's like, second of nothing because there's nothing to do as light governor, only be standing by in case the governor falls dead of a heart attack. But I'm telling you, it's just you watch this and you say to yourself, does this make sense? I don't want necessarily starched and tried and true political operatives always in office. I like the new breed of people, but oftentimes new breed of people come with some business experience where deal making was the art of the deal, where finding real estate or selling real estate required a little expertise, a little schmoozing, a little, they had some skill set that brought them to the place where they became members of Congress or the Senate. But people that come out of the woodwork, and Joe Scarborough is one I only think of because he's made a career of being an antagonist of the Republican Party now, and much as he was when he was in office, but his issue set is completely flipped. So if he kept his issue set that he did in Congress and fought us on every proposal and stayed true to that and was a right-wing crazy radio host, I'd say, hey, Joe, you're sticking to your guns. You're doing what you came to do. You learn the lesson of the hard work in the community, and you keep that message alive. But when you capitulate on virtually every issue in order to be a successful MSNBC host, it makes you say there is no there. He never had a core fundamental belief, and he continues to process information based on ratings. No conscious, no backbone, no delivery of the goods based on what he believes in his heart, just simple ratings analysis. And that's not good for the country. Maybe good for him, but it certainly doesn't help advance the arguments that you really need when you're trying to sell something important to the American public.
Former Florida Congressman Mark Foley, thanks so much for stopping by and breaking everything down and explaining to us. We so appreciate your expertise.
Always great to be with you. Thanks so much, John. Bye.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, 3 o'clock is approaching. If you want to keep the party going, you could do that.
Let me turn my mic on. That's right. You just need to download the podcast of this show. Please, we're begging you. Go to KBC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube as well, and then you can listen to us all day long. We will be the best part of your
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
But don't listen to us on Friday nights. Go do something.
We're going through the sound of California Governor Gavin Newsom's sit-down with CNN's Dana Bash.
And this time, Dana asked Gavin about Mr. Hunter.
One of the things that Republicans are relentless on, of course, is Hunter Biden. The House Republicans are now engaged in an impeachment
they're worried about
inquiry.
gun crimes, which is remarkable. I'm actually very
I want to talk
enthusiastic
about something
that.
else, which is, I should say, there is no evidence that Joe Biden directly benefited from anything that Hunter Biden was doing.
You may want to tell the Speaker of the House.
Well,
that.
Republicans have shown that Hunter Biden, he tried to leverage his father's name, and that the president allegedly, before he was president, joined phone calls that Hunter Biden's business associates were on.
Okay.
Do you see anything inappropriate there?
I don't know enough about the details of that. I mean, I've seen a little.
Wait, you watch Fox every night. You know every detail about that.
He never misses Hannity. He never misses Laura Ingraham. He never misses Jesse Waters. He never misses The Five or Gutfeld or Trace Gallagher or any of the rest of them. How does he not know?
I don't know enough about the details of that. I mean, I've seen a little of that. If that's the new criteria, there are a lot of folks in a lot of industries, not just in politics, where people have family members and relationships, and they're trying to parlay and get a little influence and benefit in that respect. That's hardly unique. I don't love that any more than you love it or other people.
Wait, everybody does this? That's the defense?
Wasn't Joe on the speakerphone as Hunter was demanding money?
Apparently.
I don't love that any more than you love it or other people, I imagine, love that. We want to see a lot less of that. But an impeachment inquiry? Give me a break. This is student government. Student government. Threatening debt again, or rather threatening a government shutdown again after we went through that process with the debt ceiling? This is student government. This is a joke. Ready, fire, aim? I mean, this is a perversity what the Founding Fathers ever conceived of and imagined. So if that's the best they can do, Give me a break. That's about public opinion.
Well, he's asked to give him a break so many times, I feel like I have to break him off a piece of my Kit Kat bar.
Go back to the original question. The original question was about Hunter Biden. His answer was, I don't know anything about that. And then he just started attacking Republicans.
Give me a break. That's about public opinion.
Should President Biden be out there defending himself, defending the notion of what his son did or didn't do? Because he's been silent on it.
With respect, I can't answer that. That's for the president to answer. Why? I will say this, though, just as trying to be as objective as I can. When you have the Department of Justice, I would best advise the president not to start meddling. This is what we were criticizing during the Trump administration. So I know y'all wanted to do something, but at the same time, we'd then be criticizing him for getting too involved and in the weeds. I think he's taking...
Did he just go Peter Brady?
He did.
For getting too involved and in the weeds. I think he's taking the right approach. It's tough personally for him not to be able to say more. I can imagine. Forget the politics. End of the day, we come and go. He's a future ex-president. I expect that will happen in 5+ years. But at a personal level, this has got to be devastating to him.
It's interesting to me that he took a pass on anything regarding Hunter Biden, would not take the bait, meaning he wouldn't go after Joe, which he's not going to do as his surrogate, but he also wouldn't defend him. He just took a pass. He was the quarterback who ran out of bounds instead of getting hit.
He said, I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
Because it just isn't big enough.
But it just didn't feel big enough.
It's 2:44. When we return, we'll tell you what Gavin Newsom had to say about Kamala Harris. We're going through the sound of California Governor Gavin Newsom sit down with CNN's Dana Bash.
We know how much Gavin loves Grampy Joe. How does he feel about the second in command, VP Kamala Harris?
You and Vice President Kamala Harris go way back.
Yep.
You say that you came up together in San Francisco, knew
Before
each other.
we were in politics.
Before you were in politics.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw that former...
How much plump jack did they down together?
My guess would be a lot.
I'm sure you saw that former Speaker Emerita, Nancy Pelosi, she heaped praise on Kamala Harris, but she declined to say whether or not she thought that the vice president is the best person to be on the ticket with Joe Biden in 2024. Do you?
Of course she is. The Biden-Harris administration, masterclass in terms of performance. Bipartisan deals on infrastructure, bipartisan deals on guns and debt ceiling, on the chips and science.
She's the best choice.
I mean, by definition, if I think this administration the last 2.5 years has been one of the most outstanding administrations in the last few decades, and she's a member of that administration, she gets to lay and claim credit to a lot of that success. The answer is absolutely.
Wait, why did Gavin's voice crack at the end of that?
Because he's not being truthful.
He gets to lay and claim credit to a lot of that success. The answer is absolutely.
He is their chief fanboy.
We are doing it.
Hers too.